Las Vegas, the city of lights that never sleeps. Amid the sea of dazzling neon and drunken laughter, there is a small bar called Empress, where lonely souls pay not for company, but simply to be heard. And in the darkest corner of that bar, an old woman of 74 quietly washes glasses every night. No one knows who she once was until one evening, when her trembling hands saved the entire club from ruin using nothing more than a glass of wine and silence. Before we begin, if stories like this touch your heart, take a few seconds to hit the subscribe button. That way, the next stories will find you more easily. Now let us listen to the woman who softened Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Strip blazed, as if the desert itself were on fire with neon lights. Among casinos, nightclubs, and drunken laughter stood a half-closed door, modest yet proud Club Empress. A red carpet spread softly underfoot. The air was thick with perfume and the scent of champagne. Under honey-gold light, women in silver silk dresses smiled with blades behind their lips. Only the chosen few could stand on that stage, where beauty and instinct were the strongest currency. "Welcome back!" a bunch of brown voices as sweet as honey rang out, followed by crystalline laughter. Middle-aged men in $1,000 suits walked in laughing, drawn backward by long lashes and practiced charm. At Club Empress, every night was the same, a stage play of desire performed to perfection. But behind the glow, where light rarely reached, was a small kitchen, dark, quiet, almost forgotten. In the farthest corner stood an old woman named Helen, bent over a basin of water. Her silver hair was tied neatly with an elastic band, and her scarred hands moved in steady rhythm. The rhythm of someone who had washed glasses for decades, precise like a clock crafted by time itself. "Oops. Sorry," she murmured, when a cloth slipped from her hands. She bent to pick it up, looking at no one, and no one looked at her. From outside came the sharp click-click of high heels. A piercing voice followed. "Hey, old lady, you're blocking the way." Out from the bar strutted Riley, the young woman known as Number 1 at Club Empress. She was 23, wearing a tight red dress, her skin glowing like neon golden curls, falling perfectly. Riley was the queen untouchable. Helen stepped aside at once, head bowed. "I'm sorry, miss." Riley smirked and brushed past her shoulder on purpose. "You know it creeps me out seeing old people wandering around here. What if you drop a glass and blame me? Maybe it's time to retire, huh? Save the rest of us the cleanup." "I'm sorry. I'll be more careful." "Careful? You look like you belong in some greasy diner washing dishes. This place isn't for you." Helen said nothing, only bowed her head. The other girls passed by, pretending not to notice. Some giggled, others whispered, "Hey, she fell in the restroom yesterday. No one helped her, and I even hid her cleaning shoes. Bet she cried." Cruel laughter echoed through the cold, stainless steel walls. Helen only bent down, picked up the cloth again, and went back to wiping glasses. Slow, steady, precise. People said she rarely spoke beyond yes, sorry, or please. Maybe she stayed not because she wanted to, but because she had nowhere else to go. When the night ended, the kitchen was empty. Only Helen remained facing a cracked old mirror. She looked at her reflection. Tired eyes, but a faint, deep light within. "At least, I smiled a little today," she whispered, a lonely smile crossing her face. And then the next night, the first disaster struck Club Empress, 9:45 p.m. Friday, Las Vegas was burning bright. Club Empress was packed. "Riley, you look amazing tonight." "Of course I do. I'm the number 1 here." In front of the mirror, she painted her lips crimson, eyes gleaming with the confidence of someone always chosen. To Riley, men were an easy game. They only wanted youth. A perfect smile, and just enough silence. You don't need skills to sell. Just be young, pretty, and know when to nod. The money comes by itself. The dressing room burst into laughter. Riley was the center of attention. The door swung open. A staff member in black ran in pale-faced. "Mr. Kingston says get ready. Mr. O'Brien is on his way." The room froze. Everyone knew that name. Thomas O'Brien, billionaire in construction, a man who could open or close any door in Las Vegas. A single frown from him could ruin entire contracts. From the hallway, Mr. Kingston, the owner, entered, black suit, sharp face stern. "Listen carefully," he said, voice calm but cutting like a knife. "Tonight's a test. Don't embarrass us. If he's displeased, not only Empress, but I am finished." Everyone held their breath. Riley, however, smiled. "Relax. If he's that powerful, then I've got the best chance. Give me 5 minutes. I'll make him forget his projects." She glanced at herself one last time in the mirror, winked and whispered, "Watch me," then pushed the door open. The VIP room glowed, bright champagne spraying in the air. Mr. O'Brien sat in the middle, white shirt, open 2 buttons, diamond watch glittering. His eyes were sharp cold, cutting through anyone before him. Riley leaned forward with a perfect smile. "You must be the O'Brien behind the downtown redevelopment project, right? I think I saw you on TV." He looked up, but didn't reply. Riley kept talking, unaware of the air turning heavy. "My dad says those big projects lately have some shady investors. Aren't you afraid of getting caught up in that?" The champagne glass in O'Brien's hand froze. Silence fell. Then, crack the glass shattered in his grip. "What did you just say?" His voice was low, cold. "I was just joking. He smirked. "Did you just say your father thinks I use dirty money?" He slammed his hand on the table. "First time in my life a hostess tells me how to run business. Do you have any idea who I am?" Riley froze, trembling, speechless. "I won't spend another cent in this dump. Take Club Empress off my list." He stood up, and the air exploded like a silent bomb. From the back, Kingston rushed in, pale as chalk. "Mr. O'Brien, please give us another chance. She's young, doesn't understand the etiquette." O'Brien gave him a cold glance. "Fine, replace her, but I expect nothing more." One by one, the girls were sent in, but each came out within minutes, eyes red and heads bowed. "These girls," O'Brien chuckled darkly. "All they do is smile and say sorry. If you don't even care to know your client, what's the point of serving him?" Another hostess left in tears. No one dared to meet his gaze. Kingston bit his lip. Voice trembling. "There's no one left, sir. No one." O'Brien leaned back, narrowing his eyes. "Then shut this place down." At that moment, a staff member leaned close to Kingston and whispered. He froze. "There's one more." Everyone looked up. Riley, hiding backstage, gasped. "No way! Don't tell me." Kingston turned away, voice unsteady. "Yes." The glass washer. The kitchen door opened and Helen stepped out. She wore a simple white dress, hair, neatly pinned shoulders, straight steps. "Sure." No one spoke. Only the light reflected in her deep, knowing eyes. She bowed slightly before O'Brien, her voice calm and low. "Thank you for waiting, sir. I am honored to serve you tonight." The room froze. No one dared to breathe. Helen quietly rearranged the glasses, replaced the ashtray, poured the wine, every motion precise, rhythmic, as if the air itself moved to her pace. "Do you smoke?" Sir O'Brien nodded slightly. Helen struck a match, waited half a heartbeat, then held the flame just as his cigarette met it. Not too quick, not too slow, but perfectly timed. O'Brien raised an eyebrow. Where did you learn that? Helen smiled faintly. Long ago, I worked at a small club in New York. Perhaps my hands still remember. O'Brien let out a small, genuine laugh for the first time that night. Interesting. He leaned back, inhaling deeply. No one spoke, but something in the room shifted the rhythm. The gaze, even O'Brien's usual arrogance, softened slightly. In that silence, a quiet magic began. Minutes passed with no words. Soft jazz hummed from a distant corner, blending with the faint buzz of slot machines in the hallway. Helen stood still, calm, steady, her hands moving as if sketching invisible lines in the air. She tilted the champagne bottle, pouring the golden bubbles so slowly that not a single pop escaped. The angle of her wrist was exact. The foam stayed within the rim, the scent just right. O'Brien set his cigarette down and watched her, first the glass, then the woman. How long have you been doing this? Helen smiled. If I count from the time I could still remember each guest's name, perhaps more than 40 years. Longer than the age of those girls outside. O'Brien said softly, half teasing, half curious. Age isn't experience, Helen replied. But if you live long enough, sometimes you learn when not to speak. O'Brien looked up, and for the first time that night, he saw someone who wasn't afraid of him. Not out of arrogance, but because she had lived beyond fear. He chuckled quietly. You know, I met dozens of people tonight. All they said was, I'm sorry. You're the first one who makes me want to keep talking. Helen bowed slightly as she replaced the ashtray. Thank you, sir. I simply believe that people don't come here to hear apologies, they come to be heard. The room slowed. Behind the curtain, Riley watched with wide eyes. She couldn't believe it. The woman she once mocked, whose cleaning shoes she'd hidden, now had O'Brien sitting still, even smiling. O'Brien swirled his glass, his voice lowering. You seem to know more than just washing glasses. I used to bartend in New York when I was young, Helen replied. Most of my customers were in real estate. They loved talking about foundations, about stability. O'Brien raised an eyebrow. Real estate, huh? What do you know about it? Helen's tone stayed even modest. If you mean Midtown North, the biggest issue is the sinking soil. Old pipes, misaligned drainage. It'll clog every winter. I heard your project's piling is there. O'Brien froze. How do you know that? Helen smiled gently. I once saw the old blueprints when a friend of mine, an engineer, worked there. I heard they're replacing the ventilation shafts underground. For a moment, O'Brien was speechless. That information wasn't public, only a handful of engineers knew. He looked at the silver-haired woman before him, as though she were a living riddle. Who are you really? He whispered. Helen gave a soft chuckle. Just someone who stood behind a bar longer than people expect. A long silence followed. Then O'Brien laughed, a true laugh that filled the once tense room. All right, Helen. Finally. Someone who doesn't pretend. I'll drink to that. They clinked glasses. The wine shimmered like a ribbon of light. Around them, the staff stood frozen, unable to believe what they were seeing. O'Brien, the man who had just cursed out Club Empress's top hostess, now talking calmly with a 70-year-old glass washer. A snap of his fingers. Bring me 2 more bottles of Angel O'Brien, said casually. The entire room gasped. Angel was the club's most expensive champagne, over $25,000 a bottle. Kingston stood behind, trembling, almost unable to believe it. Helen merely nodded, as if it were ordinary. She poured, wiped the rim gently, then stood quietly beside him. O'Brien looked around, then back at her. In other places, the girls keep fake smiles and forced chatter. Here, it's peaceful. Helen smiled faintly. Sometimes silence is the music, sir. People only truly hear themselves when the noise around them stops. He gazed at her for a long moment, then nodded. You really are, unlike anyone else. In the control room, Riley stood frozen. The other girls whispered, he's smiling for real. Oh my God, how did she do that? No one answered. They just stared at the screen. O'Brien leaning forward, laughing softly. Glass raised. Riley felt something rise in her chest. Not jealousy, but a dizzying shock, as if someone had stripped the mask off her face. 2 hours later, O'Brien leaned back, eyes shining with a calm no one had ever seen in him. You know, he said, it's been a long time since I felt this relaxed. As if all of Vegas went quiet, leaving only the drink and you. Helen bowed slightly, her hands still moving in that careful rhythm, wiping the table with a white cloth. Vegas was never noisy, sir. People just talk too loudly to forget how lonely they are. O'Brien fell silent, then laughed again. You're quite the philosophical bartender. I like that. He raised his glass. Another bottle. For tonight, the night of silence. The room stirred, staff rushing to open more bottles. Kingston nearly collapsed when he saw the numbers on the sales screen. 3 bottles, then 4, then 5. That night, Club Empress broke every revenue record it had ever known. Yet Helen remained unchanged, no showing off, no thrill. She kept her steady rhythm as if time moved slower for her than for the rest of the world. When O'Brien finally left, it was well past midnight. Before walking out, he turned to Kingston and said quietly, your club is worth coming back to. Then to Helen, thank you. I think I'll remember this night. The door closed, leaving behind a silence as deep as a sigh. Riley and the other girls came out from backstage. No one spoke. They just looked at Helen, still cleaning glasses as if nothing had happened. Kingston approached, voice shaking. Helen, who are you really? The way you speak, the way you move. I've never seen anyone calm O'Brien down like that. Helen paused, smiled softly. It's nothing. I just learned to read people's eyes. No, I'm serious. Where did you work before? She stayed silent for a few seconds, then said slowly, years ago I worked at a small bar in Manhattan. It was called Rain. It doesn't exist anymore. Back then, I served people the whole city bowed to. The room went still. A security guard gasped, wait. Rain in the legendary place that served CEOs and politicians. The one where the bartender turned 10 casino owners into regulars. In just 3 months, everyone stared in shock. Helen only smiled faintly. Old stories. I wash glasses now, because that's what I'm best at these days. She picked up the last glass, light glinting on her time-worn face, her eyes still shining. No one dared to say another word. The night passed. By morning, Las Vegas was still loud, as if it had never slept. But inside Club Empress, something had changed, not loud, not flashy, but deep, like an underground stream beginning to flow. Riley sat alone in the dressing room, eyes red, her usual confidence gone. She looked into the mirror, seeing the faint trace of red lipstick fading only in an empty face staring back. Outside, the whispers had already begun. Did you hear Helen used to be a legend in New York? No way she's that old. Believe it. Kingston's been sitting in shock since dawn. Riley heard everything. But instead of anger, she felt a strange heaviness in her chest. She remembered Helen standing in the golden light, calm, composed, needing no approval, no defense. How, Riley whispered to herself, how can someone make a whole room listen just by being silent? The mirror lights reflected on her face, and for the first time in years, Her eyes looked fragile. "Real," she murmured softly. "I want to learn that." That afternoon, sunlight streamed through the velvet curtains of Club Empress. The room was still quiet after the historic night. No one could forget the sight of Helen. The old glass washer, saving the entire club with nothing more than silence and a glass of champagne. In the corner of the makeup room, Riley sat before the mirror, her golden hair slightly tangled, her makeup untouched. She stared at her reflection for a long time as if meeting a stranger. For the first time, number 1 felt empty. From the kitchen came the sound of running water. She stood, hesitated, then walked toward it. The metal door swung open. Helen was there in her worn shirt, thin hands washing glasses, silver hair glinting under the light. Riley called softly, "Miss Helen." Helen turned, smiling gently. "Good evening, Riley. You're here early today." The young woman bit her lip. I saw everything last night. The way you talked, the way you poured wine, even the way the whole room went quiet. I've never seen anyone do that." Helen said nothing, just looked at her. "I used to think I understood customers," Riley continued, "but I only said what they wanted to hear. You didn't say anything, and they told you everything." "How do you do that?" Helen set the glass down, dried her hands with a white towel. "You want to learn?" Riley lifted her head, shy but determined. "Yes, please teach me." Helen looked at her for a long time, then nodded. "All right, but if you want to learn, you must first forget everything you think you know." From that day on, every afternoon before the club opened, Riley came into the kitchen. Helen never lectured. She simply did, moving slowly, gracefully, and let Riley watch. When Riley asked questions, Helen answered in short, quiet phrases. First, Helen said, "Watch their hands. If they tremble while holding a glass, it means they're tired. Don't push them to talk. Sometimes silence is the kindest thing you can offer. Second, notice their breathing. If they breathe fast, they're anxious. So slow down, pour, slower. Speak, slower. When you slow down, they calm down. And last, make sure they see in your eyes that you don't judge them." Riley listened, each word sinking deep into her chest. That night, while the other girls were busy putting on makeup, Riley practiced. She practiced pouring without spilling, lighting a cigarette, without haste, smiling just enough, and most of all, learning when not to speak. At first, the others teased her. "Look, Miss Number 1 is learning to wash dishes now." Riley only smiled and said nothing. But gradually, people began to notice the change. Her tone softened. Her eyes grew warmer. Every gesture carried attention. One customer who used to be distant returned and said quietly, "You make me feel comfortable here. It doesn't feel like other clubs." Helen overheard and nodded. "Good. You're beginning to understand." Weeks passed. Club Empress seemed reborn. Gone were the fake laughs and empty compliments. Now, there were simple human questions. "You look tired tonight. Shall I make it lighter?" "It's windy outside. Let me get you a warmer towel." Kingston watched from the corner, unable to hide his emotion. "I didn't hire a new star," he told his manager. "Helen just taught them how to see people." Revenue rose steadily, but what made him proudest was the new rumor spreading across Vegas. Club Empress is the place that listens. In a city where everyone craves attention, it had become the only place where people found peace. That evening, Helen was again in the kitchen, wiping glasses as always. Riley entered with a small notebook in hand. "Mrs. Helen," she said, "I had a new guest today. He never looked me in the eye. I tried to talk, but he didn't respond." Helen put down the glass, her voice kind. "If someone doesn't want to look at you, don't force them. Let them lead the rhythm. Lead the rhythm, yes. When he lifts his glass, lift yours half a second after. When he sits upright, you do the same. When he lowers his head lower, yours. When you match his breathing, he'll feel you're not a threat. Riley wrote that down carefully, her eyes filled with quiet gratitude. Thank you. No one's ever taught me like this. Helen smiled. People don't need technique to connect. They just need to feel they're not alone. Time passed quickly. 3 months later, Club Empress was unrecognizable. The music was softer, the lights warmer, and the girls moved with quiet confidence. Guests stayed longer, spoke less, and smiled more. People started calling Helen by a new name, Mama Helen. No one saw her as a dishwasher anymore. She was the soul of Empress. One night, O'Brien returned. Kingston hurried to greet him, but O'Brien waved him off. I'm here to see the one who truly runs this place. Helen stepped out from behind the bar, wearing a simple black dress. Mr. O'Brien, what a surprise to see you again. Not really, he said with a smile. I just wanted to see if the magic from that night was real. He looked around the room, warm, sincere. The girl smiled naturally without effort. Now I believe it, he said. You've turned this place into an oasis in the desert. Helen bowed slightly. I did nothing. I only reminded them that every guest brings a story, and sometimes all it takes is one person patient enough to listen. O'Brien raised his glass eyes, glinting with genuine respect. In this city, people pay to forget. But you make them remember who they are. That's rare, Helen. Helen didn't reply. She simply smiled a smile that seemed to warm the entire room. That night, Riley sat quietly at the corner of the bar, watching. When O'Brien left, she approached Helen. Mrs. Helen, I want to say something. Yes, Riley. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling but clear. I used to insult you. I thought being beautiful was enough. But now I know what people remember isn't a face, it's the feeling of being respected. You showed me that. Helen looked at her with gentle eyes. Riley, don't apologize. Pride isn't bad as long as you know when to bow your head so you can truly see others. The young woman nodded, eyes glistening. I'll remember that. A year later, Club Empress had become a sanctuary for businessmen, artists, and the weary. Not for the drinks, nor for the beauty, but for the peace. Helen still washed glasses every night, her hands slow, her eyes serene. But beside her now stood Riley, holding a small notebook, asking questions. Mrs. Helen. If a guest keeps looking toward the door all night, what does that mean? It means they want to leave, but don't dare to. When that happens, let them be you. Don't stop them. Don't rush them. Just smile. The other girls called her Mama. Even customers did too. And whenever someone asked, "Who's the manager here?" Kingston would laugh and point toward the bar, the one washing glasses. She taught us how to be human before learning how to serve. One late night, the club was empty. Riley came to Helen and asked softly, Ms. Helen, do you ever regret leaving New York? Helen paused, looking at the golden light reflecting on the glass in her hands. No, I only regret the nights when people forgot how to listen to each other. But you know, Riley said because of you, Las Vegas listens again. Helen chuckled softly, closing her eyes as if hearing distant music from an old Manhattan bar. Then I can rest easy. She placed the final glass on the shelf, dried her hands, and walked out. Neon lights shimmered on her silver hair. Riley watched her go, feeling as though she were seeing off a legend that Las Vegas never realized it had. From that day on, a small sign hung behind the bar, where only the staff could see. There are no difficult customers, only people who haven't been truly heard. Helen, the Empress of Silence. Every night when the wine poured and neon lights glowed on young faces, People swore they could still sense a silver-haired woman somewhere nearby, quietly polishing a glass, teaching through her silence. Club Empress was no longer just a bar. It had become a small temple of understanding among lonely souls. And in the dazzling heart of Las Vegas, there remained one gentle corner where light softened, and people believed that if even one person stays quiet enough, the whole world might just pause to listen. Thank you for listening to the end of the story. If you love simple stories that touch the heart, please press the subscribe button so you will not miss the next videos. And do it so I know there are still many people out there who listen to touching stories like this.